Okay, welcome. My name is Camille. I think probably a lot of you found me from the Proof of Life After Death Facebook group where I advertise. I've done sessions with several of you, and also I think Marie, you found me through my podcast, I believe, right? Through the Veil.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just glad you guys are all here. I'm going to get started by sharing my screen. Okay. All right, got a PowerPoint. And here we are. Okay, let me get in present mode. Just a sec. I'm backing it up. Okay, here we go. So, this class is, I have a couple different classes I've taught in the past. I've got my grief class, which I've taught about, where we really talk a lot about grief. My background is in grief coaching. I've been a life coach since 2007. And since my son passed in 2018, I've really shifted my life coaching to grief coaching. And so I have a class I've taught on grief and connecting. And I also have a class I just taught last week on grief and the holidays. But what this class is unique in that it's mostly just focusing on, and we touch on grief a bit because it really does relate to the connecting piece, but we focus the majority of the time on how do we connect with our loved ones on the other side? How do we strengthen maybe what we have going on, or how do we start from scratch if we feel like we don't have a lot of interaction so far, or maybe none? So, just so you guys know where I'm coming from, let's see. This is my little boy, Wesley. He passed away in 2018 when he was almost 4. You can see how he's just like a sunshine boy. He's just happy, blonde hair, always smiley, just a sweet, sweet soul. And his loss was, as you can imagine, as some of you may know, as a parent, very gutting and very unexpected. So, okay. What I've discovered, though, the invitation that comes to those who have a deep loss is that, have you guys heard that quote, grief is love with nowhere to go? It was really popular. It was actually written by a blogger back in like 2012. And I think that's a really great way to summarize grief. It's love, and you don't know what to do with it because that loved one isn't physically here. So, this class, the invitation is to take your grief and let it propel you to reach further to connect to those you miss and love. Let that loss be your motivation to learn something new so that instead of just saying they're gone and that's it, you can say they're not physically here. What is possible, right? What is still possible? And then if you're familiar with the stages of grief, there's the regular stages, the old school stages that we've learned about is the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. But there's a 6th stage of grief that a grief researcher that he created called making meaning. So you go beyond acceptance to now what? How can I take these ashes and build something beautiful from them? Or at least attempt to, right? How am I to make meaning from this? And how can it propel me forward? So the invitation is to take this grief and have it be a spiritual opener for us so we can expand ourselves and learn something new. Okay, so when I teach my grief class, I have this acronym for grief. So each of the letters has a theme. So the G is grace. In order to get through grief and learn to connect to the other side, we have to learn to love ourselves and think that we're worth it for learning something new. We're worth, educating ourselves. We're worth the journey. We deserve to have this journey. And we need to learn to be patient with ourselves because grief is such a emotional roller coaster. So we need to have grace for ourselves and for this process. It's just a lot. It's very overwhelming. We have to learn to take care of ourselves in a more nurturing way. And we'll talk about that a little bit on another slide. But the reality is that the stages of grief that I just mentioned, they are not a checklist. Like, okay, I felt denial for 2 weeks and then I moved into the anger phase that lasted for 6 months. And then I found myself in the bargaining spot. So it's not really like that. It's more like the day my son died, I felt acceptance immediately in some spiritual way, which was kind of confusing for my brain that was wanting to bargain. And my brain was also in complete denial and shock. So it's like I had three stages happening at the same time. My soul, on some level, it was accepting it, but yet my brain was completely confused and trying to think of what I could have done or should have done differently so that it wouldn't have happened. Oh, I should probably explain how my son died because people always ask. Um, he passed away because there was a bolt that had fallen loose from his toddler bed that he choked on. So it was very unexpected, very fluky. He was almost 4. You don't really think 4-year-olds are going to put things in their mouths. We had first responders here immediately. He was life flighted to a hot children's hospital. Like on paper, he should still be here. He was only not breathing for about a minute and a half. So I felt this overwhelming sense that it was his time. Like God had this plan for him that was not something I was planning on, but it felt to my spirit, it felt like this was supposed to happen and this is the plan. But my brain was like, what just happened? So what I'm saying is these stages of grief, they're not a checklist. They're not in order. They're not orderly. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. Grief is a complete mess. And so if you feel that way, then you're completely normal. That's how it is. Elizabeth Smart, who was abducted when she was 14 and sexually abused until she was, found, she was discovered again like 8 or 9 months later. She wrote a book that discussed grief. Grief can take on many forms. It's not always the loss of a loved one, but she talked about, her loss of her childhood and also the loss of her grandfather. And she talks about how it's a chaotic mess, the way that the grief cycles hit you. And it's just kind of gearing up and being ready for what happens next and just kind of going through it. That's how it is. There's no way to really avoid that. It's going to just be a hard journey. The I in the acronym is who do you want to include in your circle of support, including people on earth? Like who are your go-to people that really understand you and you can just open up to them? And maybe you don't have a lot of those people. Maybe you do. The I also can include people from the other side. Like who do you want to support you? Who do you feel like has your back? Who do you want to connect to over there? It might be more of an immediate loss, like for me with my son. It might also include, I never got to know that really cool aunt that my mom's sister. I never really got to know her because she passed before I was born, but I've heard all these cool things about her. I wonder if there's ever a message that she wants to send me, right? So who do you want to include? And then the effort is, what are you willing to do in order to connect? And it's honestly not super complicated. It's just if you have a willing heart, if you have the desire to learn to connect, that is the most important thing. If you think it might be possible, you might not even be convinced. You might say, I don't know if I'll be able to do this, but I'm willing to try. That's good enough to get started. And then the F is for flow. Once you've had some experiences connecting with loved ones on the other side, how do you stay in that flow? It's kind of like when I'm doing a session with a client. So I'm a grief coach, been a grief coach since 2007. And then I started taking classes in spirit communication a couple years ago because my goal was to communicate with my son. I just wanted a stronger connection with him. And as a unexpected byproduct of the class, I did feel like it was my path forward to use this gift to help other people connect with their loved ones. So when I'm in a session, sometimes it's like the information is coming really rapidly. And other times it feels a little clunkier. And so how do we if there's a stronger connection and then it's there's this ebb and flow. How do we get back into it? So we're going to talk about that. All right. The first part of the grief acronym is GRACE. This is the most important part because it starts with our relationship with ourselves. Grief forces us to be in a really ugly, dark, sad place. And there's often, with that stage of grief, that bargaining stage, it's like, if I had done this differently, maybe this would have happened. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. And so we need to learn to be gentle with ourselves and forgive ourselves for maybe something we wish we had done differently. And I hear this a lot in sessions. People will say, I wish I'd spent more time with this person, or I wish that I had handled their end of life care differently. Like if they had a sickness, maybe I should have taken them to a different hospital or whatever. So learning to be kind to ourselves, because, and I've actually on my podcast, it's called Through the Veil with Elle and Camille. Elle's my co-host. I trained under her for spirit communication. We've interviewed a couple of therapists who, one of them is very sensitive to the other side. She had a near-death experience. And the other one studies extensively near-death experiences. She's been studying them for over 30 years. And we asked them both the question, why would it be important for someone who wants to connect to the other side to be able to be in touch with their feelings and be kind to themselves? What's the correlation there? And because grief is so messy, if you're not able to nurture yourself and be open about what you're feeling, it's very easy to block. If you don't want to feel the feelings and go through the grief, you can kind of just stay in this denial phase. I've talked to people that are like that. They'll just say, it's been 2 years and I still am trying to convince myself that it's not real. Like he could walk through the door at any moment. But by doing so, by blocking the grief, you're also blocking the connection, because you can't connect to the other side if you're not in tune with your feelings. Does that make sense? You can't, if you're not in tune with yourself, how can you be in tune with the subtle nuances of spiritual communication, right? Have you guys heard of that book, Going on a Bear Hunt? I have a little graphic for it. So we're going on a bear hunt. It's still a children's book. Talks about, we're going to catch a big one. It's a beautiful day. I'm not scared. And then as they go on this bear hunt, they have all these obstacles. There's this blizzard, and then there's this forest, and then there's this tall grass. And one of the lines from the book is, they see this physical obstacle like a blizzard. And they say, we can't go over it. We can't go under it. We have to go through it. And then there's like 6 obstacles that they say, we can't go over it. We can't go under it. We have to go through it. And that is how grief is. You can't really bypass the feelings if you want to be able to connect to the other side. I do sessions with people who, for example, if it's the mom of a child who passed away, she's open to connecting to the other side. She's open to feeling her feelings, let's say, and then maybe like the child who passed has a dad or a stepdad who isn't in the session, but I'll feel the child on the other side talking about dad or stepdad, for example, and I'll feel like he feels kind of like his energy might be a little bit more blocked. Like it seems like he might be blocking. He's kind of in this more of a denial stage, and I feel that he doesn't want to feel the feelings and go through this grief. It's just like, yeah, we're in a different place. And that is reality. When you're, there's someone who passes in your immediate family, no two people are going to be perfectly aligned in their grief journey. Even with my husband and I, he's my best friend. We get along really well. Our son, who passed away 6 years ago, my husband and I are in different places, and we have been this whole journey. So you can assume that will be the case, but sometimes I feel in sessions like, oh, this person really is struggling. And like sometimes I feel a block, like they don't want to feel, which makes it harder for them to be able to connect. So it's also important to think about, my last bullet point here is, what is grief teaching you? And to check in with ourselves. Like, what do I need today? What how am I feeling, and to nurture ourselves and to think about, sometimes we're hard on ourselves. Um, but if we were to frame it as like, what if my kid were going through what I'm going through? How would I show up for them, or my best friend, right? So here is the emotions wheel. Have you guys seen this before? It's important because if you can't name what you're feeling, then you're going to get stuck in it. And if you get stuck in it, you can't connect to the other side because you can't even get past your own self. And if your self is the obstacle, then how are you going to be able to connect to the other side if you're just, stuck in your own feelings? So if you can identify a feeling, you're less likely to get stuck in it. So I would think that with the emotions wheel, with grief, I look at it and I think sad. That's where I would, find myself. So if I look at sad, then I would say, if I look at, I know that's tiny, but I would probably think, okay, grief, sorrow, and despair, yes. Maybe even hurt. Like I've been wronged by God or the universe that my son passed away. Or lonely, I feel isolated in my grief. Like, how many of you guys have felt that way? Nobody really gets what I'm going through. And some people try to understand and are empathetic listeners, and some people really don't. And they give you well-meaning platitudes like, well, at least you'll see your son again in heaven. It's like, well, yeah, but he was only 3. Like, it's going to be a long time. And I was 35 when he died. It's like, this is going to be a really long time. Or also you could look at anger, upset, irritated, provoked, frustrated, thwarted. There's just like, so I want you guys to take a look at this for a second and just kind of see where you have felt like which of these feelings you can connect to the most. I think also fear for me, because after you lose somebody, you kind of have that underlying fear that it could happen again, right? And you feel vulnerable and like you're not in control, and that's an icky feeling. So just kind of take a look, see what resonates with you on here. I remember I was first introduced to the emotions wheel when I was a college student. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and so they were just starting to put feelings education into public school curriculum in the 90s. And I thought it was stupid because we never talked about feelings growing up. And I was like, why are they making us do this? And then I got to college and I had an eating disorder. And I was in an eating disorder recovery support group. And it was run by one of the seniors. Well, she was a master's degree student. She's getting her degree in therapy. And so she brought out the feelings wheel, and she would make us identify a feeling at the beginning of every one of our weekly meetings. It was like a 12-step program. And so I'd be like, oh, okay. But actually, I found it to be kind of refreshing to be able to finally put a name to what I was feeling that week. And it was a good turnaround for me. I was able to recover from my eating disorder and stay in the group as a mentor. So anyway, feelings wheel. So you can name it, and then it doesn't have as much power over you. And you can it's kind of nice to put a label on it, right? And then we'll talk more later about what to do with the feelings, because once you've named it, it's like, then what, right? Okay. But also just to talk about the stages, they're not, right, we've talked about this. The stages of grief are not this orderly experience, it's chaotic. So to set the realistic expectation with yourself so you can be more gentle with yourself and give yourself more grace. Anger is one of the main stages of grief, and people can get stuck in anger for years. And I think there's layers to anger, right? There's like the initial piece where you're just so angry it happened, and then maybe other times there's moments where anger flashes, like it turns up again and you weren't expecting it to, and that's just something that will happen. And so it's good to identify that and just kind of watch it, like, okay, I'm feeling angry. And to give ourselves permission to do that and take a step back, like we're watching somebody else or watching a movie with the main character. But yeah, we can have anger towards ourselves, other people, God, even like there can be unresolved issues between loved ones, and then somebody passes away and they never got to have that conversation to hash it out or to reconcile. So that's a reality as well. So it's okay to feel anger. Watch it, allow yourself to feel it, and allow it to pass through you like the weather shifts, you know? It's easy when you're going through a loss to feel that kind of hopeless feeling and feel like I am never going to feel better. This is always going to be how I feel. It just gets extra magnified, right? And we feel really stuck in it. And I know I've been through that as well. And I see that also where I live in the winter, it gets cold here and it gets, sometimes it's gray for 2 weeks at a time. And I'm just like, it's never going to be sunny again. I'm always going to be sad. That's not true, but it feels true in the moment. So, feelings shift just like the weather. All right. Bargaining with this, one of those stages of grief, it's just trying to derive a sense of control because vulnerability is hard, right? Also with grief, we grieve who we were before this loss because we maybe had more of a sense of control in this world, security, safety, purpose. Maybe things fit into a like tidier box back then. And now that box has been shattered or blown open and it's like, oh my gosh, what's true? What's real? Like, and so it's just to be aware of the grief that you might carry might be complex. It might be more than just I lost this person. It might be I lost my sense of safety in this world or security. So that's valid as well. Okay, the including is when we include people from the other side and here to be a part of our support team, right? So I want you guys to think about for a second, who do you want to include in your grief journey from the other side? It needs to also include ourselves too. We need to love ourselves enough to nurture, to allow ourselves to spiritually expand and believe we deserve to connect to the other side. It's like a God-given birthright. We come from divinity, therefore we have the ability to connect to the other side because heaven is home, right? Okay, so I want you guys to think about who you want to connect to on the other side. And I always say when I teach this class, if you don't know, like, if you can't think about, who do I want to connect to on the other side or how is that possible? I want you to think about how you've tried to connect so far in your life just to the divine, whether that's a relationship with God or Jesus or like a divine feminine or what your, like who you've tried to connect to that is divine and what that experience has been like for you, whether it's been prayer, meditation, going to church, more of like going to nature, how has that worked for you or not worked for you in the past? So that's kind of the first step is thinking, how can I expand my relationship with the divine or reach out? Okay, so I'm going to read, this is a story. So I'm going to give you guys a background before we jump in there. When my son passed away, I felt him very tangibly. The first day, first couple, until up to the funeral, a little beyond that, it was like those first few days, he was really close to me and I could feel his concern for me, his protectiveness. I felt like he was like looking after me, right? And then that started to weaken, that connection I felt like that was so strong. It's like, where did he go? Where did my son go? His name's Wesley. Like, where did Wesley go? I was feeling him so strongly at first. And then I read this, it's a quote, I put it in my book, but it's originally from a website of a very gifted sketch artist. And I was lucky enough that I was gifted a sketch from her, from Wesley's preschool teacher and all of his classmates. They pitched in and they bought me a commission from this artist, right? And she's really talented, not just with art, but like with the other side. She's sensitive to the other side. And she had this experience when she was drawing. And she typically draws sketches of children, young people who've passed away. And she has this gift for capturing their true essence, like their personality. So this is the story. It says, one day I was drawing a picture of a young man and his sister who both died suddenly in an auto accident. I recalled a conversation I'd had with another woman whose teenage daughter had died a few years earlier. She said it was especially difficult to deal with reminders of her daughter that came up unexpectedly. Unlike birthdays and holidays, which she emotionally geared up for, the random occasions when she was suddenly reminded of her daughter were the hardest and often resulted in unanticipated heartache and tears. It made me sad to think that a sudden reminder of her daughter would be painful rather than joyful. I assure you that my thoughts were in no way critical, but were motivated solely by a longing to see her grief lessened. And just a side note, I think a lot of us can relate to a sudden reminder of somebody that we miss that comes unexpectedly, brings on a flood of emotion that can be tearful because it's like, oh my gosh, I've missed you so much. Or they just kind of pop into your head and it feels overwhelming. So that's valid. I pondered solely by a longing to see her grief lessened. I pondered that conversation as I drew, and it was as though the spirit of the young man in the drawing read my thoughts. He then seemed to enter the conversation by saying, so he really did enter the conversation. She has conversations with people on the other side. Please tell my mom and dad that when those unexpected reminders come, not to cry, because it means I'm there. When that happens, tell them to just talk to me because I'm there. The message was clear and almost pleading. It opened a completely new perspective to me. I realized that those who pass on have a desire to be a part of our lives and to continue the loving relationships they enjoyed with us on earth. But if we feel sadness and pain every time they try to make us aware of their presence, they would be hesitant to do so. Which, honestly, inevitably, when you feel this presence of somebody or you think of them and they pop into your head, it's going to be emotional. Especially when it's a fresher loss, it's going to be raw. So she's saying, I believe we can actually encourage the continuation of that association by seeing those occasions as sweet experiences of interaction. And I've since tried to share this with everyone I know. And then in my book, I said, after I read this, I felt like I had been missing Wesley's cues of late. He had been in touch, he had been checking on me, and he had been near because several times a day he would pop into my mind. It wasn't obvious times. Oh, whoops, hold on. It wasn't obvious times when I was counting the kids and was missing one, or I was walking past this depressingly vacant bedroom. It was when I was driving or doing laundry and was preoccupied with other things, and thoughts of him would spontaneously show up because he was showing up. He was poking me to say, hey, mom, I'm here. I'm still here. I just had to get to know this new kind of communication. It's like learning a new language. When he'd enter my thoughts, I'd then check in spiritually and ask, is Wesley here? So I kind of asked like God or the spirit, is Wesley here? Or I'd talk to him directly and say, Wesley, is it really you? The confirmation I received through feelings of joy, peace, or even just sensing him, feeling him, even more tangibly would thrill me and bring me the connection I was craving. It had been there. He had been there. I just hadn't known. So that's an excerpt from my book. Because what I was looking for is I was looking for more like firework experiences, like just feeling his presence right next to me, which I know I'm really privileged that I even had that experience to begin with. Some people don't get that. But then it had kind of spoiled me. And I was like, well, how come he's not just here all the time? That's not reality, though. Reality is, and as I do sessions with people that have lost loved ones, they often do tell me like, oh, I was close. I really stuck close by after I died and I wanted to be close by. But then now I pop in, I still visit, but I'm not as present, And that's reality is they really like want to kind of hover and make sure we're okay at first. And then they start balancing that with other things that they have going on, like relationships on the other side and other people they want to check on and just other things. So sometimes the subtle little thoughts of like I'm folding laundry and he pops into my head out of nowhere. That's a sign. A lot of times when I do sessions, people ask me, well, what signs are they sending me? And they're hoping for physical signs like dimes, birds, and those happen too. But often, especially when I do sessions with people that are slightly intuitive already anyway, their loved one on the other side will say, I want to send them internal signs. I call them internal signs, like thoughts or feelings versus just like, here's a dime, here's a feather, here's a song. Those are fun too. I love the physical signs, the visible ones. But it's the internal ones that I feel are also super precious because it's like they're communicating with our soul. It's that deeper connection. We're going to talk about that a lot tonight. Okay, so here's my book. If you guys are interested, this is what the cover looks like. It's on Amazon. It's Let the Angels Carry You. Whoops. Coping and connecting when loved ones pass on. And the book talks about how to, it gives more examples of connecting to loved ones and how to do it. Um, but I wanted to share one more excerpt from the book. So, and I was kind of writing this as what I would say to somebody who would doubt that I could feel him after he died. And so this is what it says. It says, the times I knew Wesley was near were unique and different than any other comfort anyone else could give. I could feel him. Everyone has a spirit which has a unique, palpable energy. It's what it feels like when you're around a specific person, when you can feel that person's personality. This is how when I do sessions to connect to loved ones on the other side, I usually feel gender first. So that helps me decide, is it a guy or a girl? And then I feel personality traits. Is this person funny, dry sense of humor, really direct? Are they stubborn? Are they kind of more quiet and private? Are they super social and whatever? But with my own child, I know what his personality feels like already. So anyway, I'll continue. It says, it's a spiritual thing beyond what the natural eyes can easily see and prove. If you want to feel this, then go to your kids' rooms while they're sleeping and get super close to them, snuggle them, or just kiss them on the cheek and feel what it's like to be around that specific child. Like there's a feeling each person gives off. It's just their own energies, their own spirit. So I said, I had felt Wes and I knew without a doubt it was him. He was with me. When his spirit came to me, the hole in my heart was gone. This was kind of how my introduction to knowing he was there. It was like that ache from him dying it was like it got healed momentarily. And that was the best part about feeling him, having a break from that excruciating pain. When he'd leave, the hole would open back up and start hurting again. So I would sense him coming, like, oh, is this Wesley? Or I'd like get a thought or a feeling like, is it him? And then I would ask God or the Holy Ghost, or you could use different words. Like I just ask like, the divine, is this actually Wesley? Or you can even ask that spirit, are you really here? And then there's like a feeling that comes with it often. And so it's interesting. We're going to talk about how to interpret what they're sending us in just a second, but I want to go through these questions first. So these questions are from my life coaching school. Life coaching is where you basically change your mindset about things. You reframe things to see them differently. Similar to therapy, but also different. Life coaches don't really deal with, we don't prescribe meds. We don't diagnose personality disorders. It's just, it's different. But the framework is often when we're struggling, we see things in an incorrect way. And the way we believe things are is not quite true. And believing it adds to our pain. So here's an example before we dive into the questions. I got to a point after he passed where, like I said, I wasn't feeling him as much. And I feel like I was really in the throes of the depression stage of grief where I didn't feel like getting out of bed. And I was just like hopeless. It was really sad. My son was gone and I just didn't feel like doing much. So because I already had this life coaching background, I decided to life coach myself through. I tried, at least. I was laying in bed and I was like, okay, what is the thought that is underneath all of this depression? What is the thought that's making me so sad? Because what the coaching believes is that underneath feelings is like a thought. And if we can analyze that thought, maybe we can come up with something more true, and then we won't feel so bad because we're aligning with truth, right? So the thought that I had to sit there for a while, a few minutes, and it finally dawned on me. The thought was, I've lost my son. That is just such a devastating, dark thing to think, I've lost him, right? And so then I asked myself, is it true? Yeah, he died. That's pretty much the definition of I've lost him, he's died. And then the second question is, do you absolutely know that it's true? I was like, well, yeah, he did die on May 28th. So yes, but I've had little experiences with where I knew he was around, So it's and it's not completely lost if I've had little experiences with him, right? And you could even apply this to the possibility of having experiences. Or maybe you've had a session with someone who can connect to the other side and you've had this tangible experience, right? So I got to know I can't absolutely know. So then I asked myself, how do I feel or react when I believe that I've lost him? Like, how does that affect me? It's so heavy. It's just dark. It's why would I want to get out of bed? What's the point? I am just trapped, it makes me feel trapped. So then I asked myself, who would I be without that thought? How would I be different? And I'd feel there's a little hope. I'd feel like I would want to try to connect to him. And then I took the original thought, I've lost my son, and I made it more accurate to my son has passed away. His physical presence is not here, but sometimes I feel him close by. And that was more true. And that gave me a little bit more just relief. Like, there is still something here. There's still possibility here. There's still hope. There's still a relationship. It's not the same. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But there's still something salvageable. So let's see what that can be, right? Also, a good reminder is this graphic. As we jump into practicing, we're going to start practicing connecting, talking about how we can sense what they're sending us. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. I believe that we existed before we came to Earth as spiritual beings who are being prepared to come to Earth school to have our experiences. And I do believe that some people have contracts where it's like, I was going to come and live a life to live to be 95, and my son was going to come and live to be almost 4. And not everybody has, maybe someone is murdered and it's like, that wasn't what the plan was. It's not everything is orderly, but I believe a lot of us have contracts. And even if something goes against what the contract might have been, God is big enough to handle plan B or plan D or plan F or Z, right? So this is a good reminder. Also imposter syndrome, because as we're trying something new and we're being brave and, trying to have an experience, a spiritual experience through the veil with our loved ones, imposter syndrome can creep in. And this quote from Marianne Williamson, I love it. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So why not try something new? We're entitled to have amazing experiences, We come from a divine place. That's where we're going to end up. So why not kind of try to interact with that world while we're here, Okay, this is the bread and butter of connecting. And after we go through this slide, I'm going to open it up for questions about anything I've talked about. So this is like the bread and butter if you want to take a class in mediumship or spirit communication. These are the 6 clairs. Clair means clear. Clair is clear in French. So clairvoyance, when you get little glimpses, like people call it your mind's eye or your spiritual eye. I've been lucky. I've actually been able to see my son in plain daylight a few times. I've seen him, his spirit. He looks the same. He's like 3.5, 4 years old, right? That's very rare. I don't ever get that experience in sessions when I'm connecting to other people's people. I see them in my mind's eye, but it's not like I'm literally sitting in my chair in my office and they just show up and I'm in my room and I'm like, hey, that's what you look like. That doesn't ever happen to me. It's more of like a spiritual seeing, right? And clear cognizance, this is one of my strongest senses, is I have thoughts that come into my head from the other side that are not my own thoughts. And the reason I know that is because I've done meditation where I've been able to practice sensing how I feel. What does my spirit feel like? We're going to do that in a second. I'm going to guide us in a meditation. clairsentience is my other strongest one. Is This is my strongest of all. It's clear feeling. I get a feeling like I wrote about in my book. What does my son's personality feel like? This is how I connect to spirits on the other side, because I feel their personality. I'm like, this person's funny, and I just feel like laughing, or they've got a big smile and I just feel like smiling. I'm feeling this person, I feel their spirit with me. Clairaudience, and I can also feel what feelings they're sending to their loved one. Like, I'm feeling so much love, from, it's like I'm the translator. So I'm feeling love from the person on the other side for the person that's still alive. Like, I just get a lot of that. Clairaudience is when you hear something. It feels like someone's whispering in your ear. Clairalience is smelling. So it's happened to me a couple times in sessions where it's like, why am I smelling cigarette smoke all of a sudden? Nobody's smoking in my house. Or even I've had pot smoke. That was like one of my best clairalience times, was when I smelled pot smoke. And I was connecting to somebody who passed away, and she smoked a lot of pot. And her mom was laughing because I was like, this is like pot. And she's like, yeah, she loved to smoke pot. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I had that experience. That was cool. Clairgustance is when you taste something that reminds you of somebody on the other side, like as their way of communicating with you. And I've only had this happen, I think, was it twice or once? It was a spicy taste on my tongue. And I asked the person I was giving the session to, did he like spicy food? Because my tongue feels spicy. And she's like, yeah, he was actually developing a brand of spicy barbecue sauce with his family, like as a business venture. So those are the 6 most common ways that spirits communicate with us. So I want you guys to look at the list and just sort of think about, have you had any of these experiences already where you had a thought come into your mind? It was not your own. You had a feeling come into your heart. It was not your own. I have to also say that when we connect to God or the divine, like in prayer or meditation, I think we can also recognize experiences like perhaps maybe you're in deep grief and you're praying for relief. You're just, I need help. Please help my heart. I feel like I'm dying. And this feeling of peace comes in that couldn't have been coming from you because you feel like you're dying. And it just comes and it calms you. That is also clairsentience, right? Maybe that comes in, and while it comes in, you smell something that reminds you of your grandma's perfume. And you're like, oh, maybe my grandma is the one sending me this piece. Like, sometimes people ask me, well, like, how do you know, like, who is sending it? And sometimes we don't know. And sometimes maybe it's just coming from the divine, but sometimes our loved ones on the other side are kind of God's messengers sending us that message, right? Like, God wants us to feel better. Why don't we have grandma come give that feeling of love? Or maybe it just is a general feeling that you feel coming from the divine, right? The other side. Sometimes it's just general, and sometimes it feels specific to a person that we know. So I want to open it up for questions. I have been talking a lot and want to hear anything you guys have to say. Questions, you want clarification? I'm going to plug in my phone really quick. I need it in a minute and it died. So anyone have any questions or comments? And if you don't, that's fine. I just want to give you guys a minute to ask anything that you want to.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Are most of your connections with your son at this point intentional, like you meditate and try for those connections, or is it more spontaneous?
That is a great question. It's such a mixed bag. It would be hard to say which one is more. I would say I do certain things to initiate. My favorite prayer regarding my son is, please help me to know when he's around. Even if it's just a quick thought, like just a blip, please help me to just know, because I don't want to be so distracted in my life that I'm missing out on knowing when he's around, like times where we could just like add a little bit of hope and cheer to my heart, So help me to know when he's around just by praying that prayer. I do have I feel like more little interactions with him. For example, I was taking my younger son on an e-bike ride where there's like this bike that I have with a little seat behind for him with a little like handle to hold on to. And he's about the same age Wesley was when Wesley died. And we didn't have the e-bike when Wesley was alive. And I was going down the street and I had said that prayer earlier that day. And I felt Wesley come and like he was talking in my ear and he was like, "Oh, this looks so fun. I would love this. This is awesome. I'm glad you guys are having so much fun." And that was it. It was just a quick little interaction. And I felt that relief, like, oh, he's here. And then when he left, I was like, I felt the absence. I'm like, oh, he's gone. It's always like, yay, oh, you know? Um, and it's been 6 years now, 6.5 years. So it's not as heavy as it was when it first happened. But I would say it's mixed bag. Um, Sometimes he just randomly shows up and I don't even say that prayer. I think it's about 50-50 for me. Definitely by setting the intention though, and by offering that prayer and like every day I set the intention, even if it's just like on a unconscious level. I hope I have an interaction with Wesley today. And sometimes I let a week go by without setting that intention. I don't really feel him around as much. When I feel more like I need to feel him, I set it more. I'm like, oh, it's been too long. I need to feel him. I need to like have a thought about him, something, right? So I think it's about 50-50. But if I don't set the intention, it can, weeks can go by where I am like, oh gosh, it's been a long time. So, any other questions?
I had a question. I threw it in the chat, but I'll just
Oh,
ask you.
shoot. Yeah, let me
Um,
stop the
oh,
share because I think
totally
what's
fine.
happening is the chat doesn't show up for me when I'm sharing my
It's no big
screen.
deal.
Okay.
So the other day, my it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. My dad and I both had kind of an experience where we felt like we were communicating with my mom. I was worrying about something like I'm responsible for like our neighborhood Christmas party. And she was my go-to, like, how do I decorate? What do I do? So my mind was focusing on those things. And I clearly heard her say, you can use my things, use my stuff. And later that day, I got a message from my dad via text saying that, around 4 o'clock in the morning, mom was talking to me and she gave me these words and um, which is a lot of poetry, which I think is so funny because my mom hated poetry and like she's not poetic. And so I'm like, okay, how could she have been telling me to borrow her stuff and at the same time reciting poetry to him.
She
So
could have been
that's
trying to be
where
funny too. I feel like sometimes they tease sometimes more than we realize, right?
uh-huh.
They do. Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool that she told you you could use her things. Was that more of a thought? Was that clear cognizance? Was it a feeling and a thought? What do you think it was?
Um, I know her voice, and so
Okay.
I just I hear. That's
Yeah.
my thing. I hear,
Hmm.
and so I knew she was just saying, "Use my stuff,"
Yeah.
she said exactly how she would have said it, and
Yep.
it, anyway, so and then to later on get something for my dad that was like exact same time, which is a weird time, 4 in the morning, was like, was I just making it up? How could she have been in both of our minds at
Oh,
the
you
same
know what?
time?
That's a great question. When I was practicing in my like study groups to do spirit communication, there would be five of us trying to connect to the same person at the same time. And we would spend like 8 minutes just collecting whatever information we could get, writing it down, and then sharing it with the group after. That spirit could connect to all five of us in those 8 minutes. It wasn't like, oh, for the first 2 minutes, I got nothing because they were talking to my friend Rachel. And then Rachel got the next 2 minutes. And then, no, it's not like that. They have this ability to um, be communicating with more than one person at the same time. Their brains are just more expanded. They say that we only use 10% of our brain capacity as humans, right? They have so much more access. And so it's hard for us to perceive that and understand. But like, brains are just better than ours, you know? Okay, that tingling feeling. Yes, yes, yes. That is a good one. That's another way of saying clairsentience. It's like a physical feel, right? And this is from the chat from Christy. Yes, some people get this more than others. I don't get it very often. Um, oh, you get the chilling. It feels like he's giving you a hug. That's awesome. I don't get the tingly feeling very much. But today it happened. It was very unexpected. Um, I was at church, and every year the little kids, ages like 3 to 12, do the singing program. and it's the cutest thing ever. And I every year when it comes, I'm like, huh, how old would Wes? Which group would he be with? He'd be 10 now, you know. And it's always a little emotional for me because it's one of the highlights of the year, and he's not there to be one of the participants. And I was sitting on the pew, and I felt this like tap on my ankle, and I looked down because I'm wearing boots that cover half my ankle, but it was like well above that. It was like 4 inches above where my boot was, and I felt like a little. I was like, "Is that Wesley?" I was like, no, he never touched. Like, I don't get that from him very much. But at the same time, I felt it. I had the thought come into my head, like, I'm here, mom. And it was actually really beautiful because I know other people that I go to church with, women that have had a lot of fertility issues. I don't know any other people. No one else has lost a child that was living. But I've had, I know women who've lost like babies stillborn and like had babies die in utero. And I was like, I had this impression, like I'm here with other big, like kids from the families here. And like, we're all here. And it was really cool. So it was like happening. That thought came, that feeling came as I felt the tap. And so I was like, okay, I think that's a sign. And it's easy to doubt our signs. I'm like, oh, is that real? You know, I still do that, but yeah, that's definitely legit. And it's and the goosebumps. I love the goosebumps when I'm doing sessions. Sometimes I feel the goosebumps. They feel the goosebumps. It's like, yeah, we're connecting right now. Okay, so what we're going to do right now, I'm going to invite everyone to turn off their cameras, and we're going to try just a quick meditation. I'm going to guide it where we get to feel what we feel like. We have to, in order to connect to the other side, you have to identify, what do I feel like? So you can differentiate your spirit from another spirit coming in. So I'm also going to turn off my video. Just invite you guys to get comfortable. I'm going to mute everyone so there's no noise. Okay. I think we're all muted now. Yep. All right, I'm gonna invite everyone to just sit, be comfortable, and take a few deep breaths. Breathe in through the nose for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. In for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. In through the nose and out through the mouth. Let's do it again. In for 4. Hold. Hold. As we sit here, let's continue breathing. And let's just feel settled in getting to know what our own spirit feels like. What personality traits do you sense in yourself? What emotions are you feeling right now? Are you calm, jittery, excited, hopeful? Just get to know your own mind and your own heart. What makes you you? Keep your mind in the present. If you are feeling distracted, focus on how the breath feels in the nostrils as you breathe in. Hold. And exhale through your mouth. Let's take a moment for another 20 or 30 seconds to just get still with ourselves. What do we feel like? What makes us us? All right. I'm going to turn my camera back on and open it up for questions. If you guys have any questions about this experience, like what did you guys experience? Was it distracted? Did you have a hard time staying in the present? Were you like thinking about, what you did earlier today, what's going on tomorrow? It's Monday. Like what what was that experience like for you? You can put your answers in the chat or you can talk. How did that meditation go? Could you feel into who you are? Were you able to like connect to you? Yeah. And then if you were, and you don't have to share this out loud, but just think, what were some of those emotions? Like, how would you describe yourself? I need to think about that. We're going to go back to the slides. We're going to do a guided meditation where we discuss how to like keep ourselves in the present moment a little bit more. First step was just, what do I feel like? Second step is knowing what we feel like a little bit better. How do we keep our mind from wandering? That's like the big question with meditation. How do we stay in it, right? So let's jump back into my slides. Let's see, hold on. Okay. All right. All right, so our 6 clairs. Now we're moving into the effort. So the creating intention, like I talked about, creating awareness. We set aside time to connect, creating moments of stillness, keeping our vibration high. This is important. What this means is if you want to connect to the other side, you got to like keep yourself in a good place mentally, emotionally. That doesn't mean you're perfect. That doesn't mean you're a robot. That doesn't mean you can't name those feelings on the feeling wheel and like sit with them and just allow them to be. But what it does mean is you, it gets distracting to connect to the other side when you're stuck in your own self. So if you're stuck in like hatred, resentment, anger towards other people, like negative attitude, constantly, that makes it hard. I keep my vibration high and I'm forced to because I do this for a living. Like people pay me and trust me to be able to connect to their loved ones. So I didn't mean to go back. I keep my vibration high by meditating, but in the morning, every morning before I do sessions, I do a guided meditation. I do deep breathing. I listen to Native American flute sounds on YouTube. Like I alternate what I do, but I always do one of these things. I'll do yoga, guided meditation, deep breathing, listening to like the Native American flute or other kind of meditative music on YouTube, or I always pray before sessions. But keeping your vibration high is important because how it works is on the other side, spirits are like, let's say their vibration in the spirit world is up here, and Earth, we operate kind of right here. So if we're going to meet in the middle, I have to bring my vibration up, and then to connect with me, they bring theirs down a little bit. It's just, so that's how we do it, is we have to meet in the middle. So it's important to keep your vibration high. Gratitude and sending love is a great way to get your vibration higher. I have to be really conscious of where I'm at emotionally because I can't go into a session if I'm like really annoyed at somebody in my family because something just happened. I'm like, ugh, I just can't stand them. And then I can't be like, oh, I'm going to connect now. Right? It doesn't work that way. So getting out of a funk could be as simple as being gratitude, sending love to someone on the other side, sending love to God, focusing on what I'm grateful for is sort of to get myself out of a funk. And then I always say like, and we're going to do an exercise soon where we take notes on what we're feeling or what we're kind of perceiving from the other side. Are they sending us thoughts? Are we feeling feelings? Are we hearing things? Are we getting anything like visual? But to just be ready to write it down, because when you write it down, it's kind of like you're committing to it and you're opening yourself up to more by writing it down. It strengthens the connection. Okay. Ways to connect to the other side. You can talk. I'm sure most of you already talk to the loved one on the other side. That's really common. In your head talking or out loud when you're by yourself driving your car, hey, I miss you. This is what I did today. You probably already know. I just wanted to check in and tell you I love you. That kind of thing. Meditation, yoga, time in nature. Nature is great for connecting because it's beautiful and it puts your thoughts into the present moment. You're not distracted about what happened before and what's coming up next in your life. You're like, oh, the birds and the sun coming through the trees, and it's really beautiful. It just puts you in that present moment, which is that pocket you need to be in to connect. Music can help, and just that stillness, that listening. I skipped prayer with journaling. It's always saying prayer and then doing intuitive writing. We're going to practice that in a second. And then gratitude we've talked about. Okay. This is a quote from a book that I love. It's called, the name of the book is Friend of the Devil. He's not implying we're friends with the devil. It's becoming the friend with the part of ourselves that are like, it's hard to love. That's what it's about. He says, find a quiet, private setting in which you can pray for and or meditate on the influences of those beings on the other side eager for your success. You don't need to communicate with these beings through fully thought out sentences or phrases, though you certainly can do that if it feels right. Maybe you can just set an intention to welcome their love and guidance. No need to wait for lightning to strike or angels to sing. The act of simply sitting, kneeling, or otherwise holding a posture that demonstrates your intention is enough. Okay, so going back to that intention, welcoming love and guidance, and he talks about sending, is just meditating on those who are eager for your success, right? So when we're talking to our loved ones on the other side, it doesn't have to be in full out sentences. It could just be like, I miss you, send me something, like indicate that you're close by at some point today, right? Setting that intention, and then creating a space where you can meditate in stillness is a great way to get started. So what we're going to do right now is I want to invite people to turn off their cameras again. We're going to do a guided meditation where we focus on staying in the moment. And in the guided meditation, I'm going to, as a visual, when a thought comes in that's distracting, we're going to envision, there's two options here. Think of a balloon that's like got a string on it and it's floating. It's got helium. You can clip the string and that balloon can float away. Or my favorite one is you're on a lake and there's this little toy boat coming towards you slowly. You see it coming, you identify the thought, the distraction, and then you push it away slowly and you just watch it go into the horizon. So just a couple things, like we're gentle. As distractions show up, we acknowledge them. We say, I see you. Thank you, but no thank you right now. And we kind of get back into focusing on what does the breath feel like in the nostrils, and then letting it out. So we're just going to do a guided meditation to practice not just feeling who we are, our spirits, but to how to stay in the moment. And also we're going to set the intention to see what might come in from the other side, whether it be from just God, the divine, or specific person attached to it. So let's begin. Let me turn off my video. By getting comfortable, taking a deep breath in through the nostrils for 4, holding it for 4, breathing out for 4. And we'll continue this breathing on your own. One more time, in through for 4, hold for 4. As you continue this breathing on your own, I want you to think about the love you have for somebody specific on the other side. And I want you to think about your gratitude for them and your love for them. And maybe it puts a smile on your face. Maybe it helps you feel like they're not as far away. And as we take these deep breaths, I want you to focus on the present moment. What do you feel? What do you hear? And as you sense your own self, what do you feel like? I want you to take notice as other thoughts cross your mind. And you can envision it as a balloon floating towards you. The distraction, and you just take a pair of scissors and clip that string and watch the balloon float away. Thank it for coming, but thank it for leaving, and let it just float off. Take a few more deep breaths. Get settled into what you feel like in this moment. And at the same time, open up your heart to receiving communication from the other side. Open your heart with gratitude that it's possible. If other distracting thoughts come your way, think of it as just a little boat coming towards you on a lake, and just gently push it away. And as we set the intention to connect to the other side, pay attention to what thoughts are coming into your head. Ask the other side to send thoughts your way. Or perhaps you're more of a feeler, and pay attention to what feelings come into your heart, your soul. And ask the other side to send you feelings. And maybe it's just a feeling that you're not alone, and that you have value, and that you matter. Just get interested, get curious about what feelings and what thoughts. And we also want to practice visualization. So I want you to come up with a scenario. And you can borrow mine if you want. When I connect with the other side, I envision myself sitting on a park bench in a beautiful scene. It's green grass fields, flowers, those scenes you read about in near-death experiences with big open fields. And I see myself sitting in a park bench, and I see the green grass, and I see flowers, pink flowers, green stems, green leaves, blue flowers. And I see groups of people just sitting on this grass, conversing. And I sit there wondering, who is going to come and sit next to me? Who wants to communicate? By keeping our vibration high, we're only asking for the good influences, the good spirits to come be with us, the ones who love us, the ones who want to help us. Pay attention to what feelings are coming your way. Are you seeing anything with your mind's eye? If not, strengthen your visualization. What does your spot look like? Where would you like to go to connect to your loved one? Are you on a sandy beach? Where are you? Envision it strongly. Hold on to that. What colors are around you? Spend a few more moments focusing on what comes to your mind, your heart, possibly your spiritual eye. Are you hearing anything? Take some more deep breaths and just sense what's coming in. And if you're not sure, If anything's coming in, then send something out. Send a message to who you want to connect to. What do you want to tell them? Send it out with love. Spend another 20 seconds or so sending our final messages of love and gratitude and sensing if anything is coming in return. Maybe it's just a subtle peace. That's a message. That's something. Maybe it's just calm. That's something too. All right, we are going to practice this again soon, but first I want to talk about a couple of points that will help us stay focused in it. I'm going to kind of recap some. I'm going to share my screen again. And then we're going to listen to a song that it's a lot easier sometimes with music because you need something distracting in the background. So we're going to practice it with music next. All right, let me get to, here we go. Yeah, I hear my kids downstairs. Totally. My mind wanders. I have dogs running everywhere in here. I get it. The song's going to help us not wander quite as much. So here we go. All right. So we're setting our intention. We're sending love, receiving love, sending gratitude, feeling connected. Hopefully that's the goal. Okay, that's the song we're going to listen to in a second. How to do it right. Well, be okay with where you are. Be patient with yourself. This is like baby steps. This might be your first time practicing this and you're like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. Be okay doing it wrong. That's one of the things I learned in life coaching school is there's no like one way to do something. There's no only right way. Give yourself permission to do it wrong and just experiment and see what comes and just be open, right? Because if we are so intent on doing it right, we might be missing what's coming. Kind of like when I was expecting my son to show up for me, like really feeling him so close after he died and then that dwindled, I was like, he's gone. Well, no, he wasn't gone. He was more subtle with how he came through. So I felt like I was doing something wrong, but I was just not open to the fact that he might come through differently, right? Being gentle with ourselves, okay? Let's be understanding to ourselves. When we are trying to be in the moment and some distracting thought comes in or sound, we can identify it, but not stay in it. We can identify it and just kind of like, all right, now what's next? And just let it go. There's this book I love called The Power of Now. And it talks about witnessing the presence of the distraction. We're not judging it. We're not condemning ourselves for being distracted. We're watching it. We're just watching the thinker. And over here, it talks about being intensely aware of the present moment. So I have a hard time with this because I'm ADD and I tend to want to like think 5 steps ahead. Okay, I'm going upstairs to grab my keys and then I'm going to go drive to the doctor's office where I'm going to fill out the paperwork and then I'm just going to hang out on my phone while we wait. So I might be running upstairs to get the keys and my brain is like I'm sitting at the doctor's office already. Well, so I actually don't have to take my ADD medicine anymore because I've learned to be so in the present moment. It's helped me not forget things all the time because I'm not 5 steps ahead anymore, right? So when I'm going up the stairs to look for the keys, I'm trying to focus on like, what are my feet actually doing? Just being in the moment. It might seem so boring, but it's actually really relaxing to not be 5 steps ahead. It's nice to just be in the moment and nothing else. So what's also cool about being in the moment is when you're intensely conscious, it feels satisfying and it creates a gap where I'm not thinking about stuff because the present moment is pretty simple. I'm just moving my feet on the stairs. What is there to think about? So there's this gap where I'm highly alert, and that's the essence of meditation. And when we create that gap, it's easier for the other side to come in because we're not thinking, we don't have this mind chatter going on. So just being in the stillness of the moment. It's taken me a long time to get to this place because before I couldn't even meditate without like wanting to just, busy my mind with other things. I wasn't comfortable with that stillness, but I've been able to grow into it. So, okay, I'm just kind of going off of the highlighted parts, see the red highlighted part on the second page here is the single most vital step on your journey toward enlightenment is this: learn to disidentify from your mind. Every time you create a gap in the stream of mind, the light of your consciousness grows stronger. So it's just an invitation to practice. I'm not perfect at it. I'm still distracted a lot, but I'm working on it and it's helping. So just know, like, it's that present moment that helps us connect. We've got to be in that present moment. Okay, we're going to do the guided meditation with a song. The song is called Promise by Tracy Chapman. I'm going to go back to lyrics here. But honestly, I invite you while you're listening to this, just to take some deep breaths, get your journal out. Maybe you look at the lyrics, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't even look at them at all. And just send love and gratitude to somebody on the other side or to God, the divine, and just see what comes back. Pay attention to thoughts that come in, feelings, perceptions, any shifts, maybe your gut reaction. Just pay attention to little inclinations, little subtleties that come into your mind and heart. Possibly visualizations. If you guys are super clairvoyant, I mean, I'm not the most clairvoyant, but I know other people that are more than I am. So just be open to all of it and see what comes in. I'm going to pull up the song and I invite you guys to turn off your videos and just sit in the stillness of the moment and enjoy. So let's see if I can turn off my video from here. Okay. Let's see. Oh, just a sec. Okay, so it's about a 5-minute song, so get comfortable and get your journals out and just see what comes in. Be curious. It's time to be curious, and we're not trying to do everything right. We're just going to experiment. If you wait for me, then I come for you. Although I've traveled far, I always hold a place for you in my heart. If you think of me, if you miss me once in a while, then I'll return to you. I'll return and fill that space in your heart. Remembering your touch, your kiss, your warm embrace, I'll find my way back to you if you'll be waiting. If you dream of me like I dream of you,
in a place that's warm and dark, in a place where I can feel the beating of your heart. Remembering your touch, your kiss, your warm embrace, I'll find my way back to you if you be waiting. Oh, I long for you, and I have desire to see your face, your smile, to be with you wherever you are. Remembering your touch, your kiss, your warm embrace, I'll find my way back to you. Please say you'll be waiting. Together again, it would feel so good to be in your arms, where all my journeys end. You can make a promise, if it's one that you can keep, I vow to come for you if you wait for me. And say you hold a place for me in your heart, a place for me in your heart, a place for me in your heart, a place for me in your heart.
Okay, I love that song because it talks about, I see it as the perspective of somebody on the other side. If you wait for me, I'll come for you. I've traveled far, but I hold a place for you in my heart. I'll return to you and fill that space in your heart. I'll be waiting. The lyrics they hit really well with the predicament of grief and with the possibility of connection. So this is a great one if you to do intuitive writing too, just to write down what impressions you get from the other side. And I want to also remind you not to be overlooking the small stuff, because you might just feel like, oh, I felt kind of good and I don't know why. I don't know what it was. Mm-hmm. And the emotions, Christy's talking about, okay, that song was beautiful, but squeezed my heart. Remember, it can be a really good sign that connecting is happening when you get emotional, because feeling that person come into your heart and hold that space, you're like, oh, it's you. I've missed you so much. I love you so much. Where have you been? I miss you. I love you. Thank you for coming. It's so nice to feel you. And it's like a flood of emotions, right? And sometimes it's less emotional and it's more like, I think sometimes we overlook the casual hellos we get from the other side too sometimes. Like, if we're only looking for that intense emotional experience, we might not get it sometimes. But it's like grief. It ebbs and flows. We don't know when we're going to get hit with what stage. That's kind of how this connecting thing goes. Sometimes it's deeply emotional. Other times it's like, I don't know. I just felt like that spirit was smiling and I kind of felt their laughter, or I just felt loved. I felt seen. I felt happy. Sometimes it's more casual. When I'm connecting with loved ones on the other side for other people, often if they have a sense of humor, that's the first thing that hits. I'm like, oh, this is a funny guy. He's funny. Like I just want to smile and laugh, just connecting to his energy, you know? So just being open for whatever comes. Let's see here. Going through the slides. Okay. So how this becomes a practice instead of just like a one-off experience is you just set intentions to set aside time more regularly, right? It becomes a habit. Instead of doing it, oh, I'm going to do some meditation today. It's something we like practice, and it becomes something we practice like regularly with just being open, being willing to connect to the other side. Anytime, any place, whether we're doing a meditation or we're driving in our car. Sometimes spiritual messages come when I'm just like going to the bathroom because it's quiet, you know, and I have kids that run around and like distract me all the time. In the bathtub, in the shower. It's more about a feeling. These intimate experiences can happen anywhere we go, but they also happen more if we do set time aside to create them, whether it be listening to a song, doing a guided meditation on YouTube, just focusing on breathing, yoga, like creating that space does help. But eventually it'll become a way of being and not just something that you do. This is kind of going back to grief, why it's important to talk about this with connection is you can feel grief and joy at the same time. They're both are possible. It's confusing, but it's possible. Longing and grateful, abundance and loss, growth and exhaustion. Trying to connect to the other side is mental, spiritual, emotional work. You can feel these things at the same time. So just letting you know that's a real experience. And that's common. Okay, so the invitation is ride the roller coaster of grief, find meaning, do things to connect intentionally, and just being open to connecting, being a connectable person is an invitation to a richer spiritual experience. And to reflect on how has your grief changed you and how will it continue to? You know, it's a journey, and I don't know if we all know where it leads. And so being open to the process of where it takes us and how it changes us. I know my grief has made me more of an introverted person, but as more of an introvert, I create more quiet time for myself to connect. And that's great. I never thought I'd be this much of an introvert, but it's working well for me. So it's fine, you know? Okay. For our last guide, I know we're a little bit over, but I wanted to do one more music song where we can pose a question. So one way to deepen a connection to the other side isn't to just reach out and with love and gratitude and see what comes in, but it's to ask a question and ask for information specific. So what do you most love about me? What do you want me to learn from this experience? I feel good about doing X, Y, and Z. Am I on the right track? I get this question a lot in sessions. We connect to loved ones and see what they want to say. What do I need to change about myself to grow? What attributes or qualities do you want me to develop? Am I on track for living the purpose for which I was created? What can I do to feel closer to God? These are examples. If these don't resonate with you, come up with a question, but I want you guys to take 20 seconds right now and come up with your question. Maybe your question is going to be specifically for God or the divine, and you want to just start there. Maybe you have a specific question for your mom or your son or your dad on the other side. So just kind of think about who you want to connect to or talk to and what you want to ask them. And then I'm going to open it up for questions one more time before we do this, just to, if you guys have any questions about the process before we get started. So I'll leave this up for like 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to stop the share, and we are going to listen to another song. So just have a little bit more time. And then if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, because I want you guys to get the most out of this experience. Obviously, it's very introductory class, baby steps, give yourself grace, just be curious about it, right? We're not trying to do everything right here. There's no just right. It's just learning. But do you guys have any questions? Let me know. I'm going to pull up the next song. It's actually, it's a song that I wrote called Strong Within the Wind. And I wrote it from the perspective of somebody who is also on the other side, just like the promise from the Tracy Chapman song is like that. And it talks about creating moments of stillness to connect. So it says, please be quiet and still and don't doubt the words that you feel. So I'm going to pull that up. I wrote this song after we had my son passed away. And then that same year, we had like all these family friends pass. It was just wild, all these unexpected passings. And we had like a double murder among our family friends. Someone got hit by a car. It's just a lot. And then we had a family friend who died by suicide. And he was a missing person for a few months. And it's just a lot. And I wrote this song just kind of like giving assurance to loved ones who are still on earth. And what I'll do is, okay, let's see. Marie says something. I'm struggling to know who to connect to. I haven't lost anyone for a long time, and so grief is not a part of my process. Okay, that's a fantastic question. In that case, you don't have to know who you want to connect to. You could just say, like, I want to connect to anybody on the other side who cares about me and who's involved in my life. So that would be like a spirit team or a spirit guide. I think of a spirit team as like a wheel that has a hubcap in the middle with like the main people that are looking out for you. On my spirit team, I've identified a great grandma. I know my son is really involved, but he hasn't, like, even before he was my son, I feel like there's other people that have known me for, like been a part of my life. And so I've definitely identified a great grandma on my spirit team. I'm not exactly who else is like the hubcap of this wheel, but on the outer rim, I know my son's there and I've had experiences with others. So you could just say anybody on my spirit team in the middle of it or on the out, like, peripheral, central, who cares about me? Because I guarantee you there are like lots of people that do. And just open it up for anyone who wants to respond. And maybe when you feel into the response, you'll sense, oh, this feels more like masculine energy talking to me, or feels more like feminine. Maybe you'll feel into it. But just be open to anyone that wants to talk to you. Or maybe just God. That's a beautiful way to start. Okay. I'm going to turn on the song and then I'll share the lyrics if you guys want to look at them. Okay. I feel the wind blow. It's warm and gentle now. Softer billows fills me with peace somehow. But last night it blew cold and I felt alone. I know my fears are strong, I know my time's not long. I pray that I'll be strong within the wind. When fiercer tempests blow, all the things I know will stand secure, won't be overthrown. My faith is changing. I used to have my plan, and then he told me my time is at hand, and I feel it in my heart. And when we are apart, I know the pain is real, it lives deeply concealed. I pray that you'll be strong within the wind. When gentle breezes blow, whisper you are not alone. You'll be secure, not overthrown. Please stand quiet and still. Don't doubt the words that you feel. And I promise that when I take my flight, you with all my might. I know our fears are strong, I know our time's not long, till we're together in the end. When fears or tempers grow, all the things we know, we stand secure, not overthrown. We will be strong within the wind. We will be strong within the wind. Strong within the wind. Yeah. Until we are together again. Okay, so this song is like a reminder that when people pass on, it says, I promise that when I take my flight, I'll fight for you with all my might. Like that is such a reality. I really like what Marie asked in the chat about not knowing who to connect to. I had an experience, and we'll end on this one, and then open it up for questions again at the end. I was doing a sound bath. It was my first sound bath. I was at a retreat for parents who lost a child, like a young child or a baby. And a sound bath is when you lay down on a yoga mat typically, and there's these sound bowls that are played, and it just forces your mind to be in the present moment because the sound is so commanding. It's beautiful, it's loud, and you just kind of like lay there bathed in it. And I was laying there. I'd never done one of these before. I wasn't planning on anything really special happening besides being relaxed, but I kind of had a vision experience where, and I'm not super clairvoyant. I'm clairvoyant. I see things in sessions, but I'm not like some of my medium friends that are like, and then I'm saying this and I'm saying that. And I'm just like, whoa, you guys are so clairvoyant. I more of the feeling and thoughts, but as I'm laying there, I saw myself sitting in a chair all by myself in this dry, cracked desert. And I was like, yes, I feel lonely in my grief. This represents how lonely I feel. And not just in my grief, we had moved to a new state and I just hadn't found my people yet. I just felt disconnected and lonely. Plus my son had just died. So that adds up to it, of course. And as I'm laying there seeing this visual, I also felt like energy of other people coming towards me. And I actually saw lights. It was this village that's like off to the distance in this desert. And this village got closer and closer to me. And I realized that in this village was like 50 people that all knew me and all really liked me and thought I was a cool person and wanted to be they were my friends. Like they were inherently my friends that I'd forgotten about that lived on the other side. And they were like my village of people. And they came and they surrounded me. And I just felt so immersed in love and so at home with them. Like we know each other. We're all buds. You guys are real. You guys are actually my people that I forgot about. And you all have my back. And so when we think about spirits on the other side, it's not just like, who are my 3 people that have died that I'm the closest to? It's like, we have a whole village and maybe we don't know exactly how we know these people, but they know us and they love us and they are here to offer guidance, wisdom, clarity, peace, and purpose. And it's just, they're real. So that visionary experience taught me I'm surrounded by support on the other side. Angels are real. And if we really knew how much they were looking out for us and loving us, it would astound us. It would blow our minds. So they're definitely there. Learning how to connect to them is a bit of a learning curve. But if we open ourselves up to it and set the intention, then more will come. And as we have interactions and we're like, I think that was something, it's good to identify it and think and be grateful for it. Say, I'm thankful. Like, thank you for sending me that sign. And then ask for more. So that's the recipe. You, number one, you acknowledge. And even if you're not sure, be like, I think that was the sign. I think my son was touching my leg earlier today. That doesn't normally happen, but something was touching my leg, right? And nobody was there. It's like this invisible force touching my leg. You just say, thank you. Or like I identify it. I thank you and send me more because I want to continue connecting. So that's sort of the blueprint is the identifying, the thanking and the asking for more, and just keep practicing. Whether it be music or guided meditation or yoga or however you want to do it, nature time, find your ways that work the best for you and just practice. Okay, last questions that you guys have. And if you don't have any, that's fine too. I just want to make sure I'm not turning the meeting off if you guys have anything you wanted to say. Do you feel like the connecting, when you guys did the connecting exercises, did you, were you able to pick up on anything that felt like, it doesn't have to be a super significant experience. It could just be like, that felt really calming for my soul. You know what I mean? It's not always fireworks. Sometimes it's just really subtle things that come. That's typical. Yeah.
So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So for me, before I asked the question about, so I was struggling to know who,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was, but certain people names kept coming to my mind, so I wrote them down. And then when you talked about, that there's different people, and I thought like your team, and I thought, well, maybe these people I wrote down are part of my team. And there's one on there I've never even met, but I know of her.
Perfect.
And
Okay.
I've heard her voice once before.
Oh,
And
nice.
and so what was I gonna say? Oh, and then there's one in particular, like with my grandma, I just felt a lot of emotion. So I guess what I'm asking is is that typical? Am I on the right path?
Yes, you're on the right path. And I forgot to mention something that you reminded me of. So I also want to let you guys know that oftentimes the spirit will communicate in a way that suits them. So maybe your grandma was more of an emotional woman and she comes through and you're like, whew, I'm feeling it. And then maybe you connect to somebody else who was just more of like a left brain person and they're just giving you the thoughts. So you have to be flexible because they're going to connect in different ways. My son Wesley comes usually through thoughts and feelings. But I had my husband's grandpa came one time, just I heard him. And I wasn't used to that one. Like I'm not super clairaudient. That's the one that's clairaudience. I don't get that a lot. But maybe that's how he wants to communicate with me, right? So you just gotta be open. And we don't want to limit ourselves and say, I'm not clairvoyant, because I have moments with clairvoyance. I do regularly, but just because it's not our strongest sense, some people are so visual when they come to me, I'm getting image after image after image. And I'm like, dang, that's
So
awesome.
it's like a two-way street. It's them and you, and
It
it's how they
is.
want to communicate, and you've got to figure out. Because I've had experiences in situations where I just feel so much emotion, and I'm like, what is this? And then
Yeah.
other times I don't feel very much, and it's
Mhm.
probably because they communicate different. Is
Right.
that what you're saying?
Yep. So we got to be open. It's not just going to be one way, and it's not going to be the same every time. That's why it's so fun, is because it's like you never know what you're going to get, and you never know how it's going to come through. And it's interesting. It's just really interesting, right? It's not the same every time. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks you guys for being here.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you guys took this class. And if you have any follow-up questions that you don't want to ask in front of everybody, send me an email. Yeah. Or if you want to do a session one-on-one. Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm sorry, I just had a quick question about kind of determining kind of like what Marie was saying about your team. Um, and names were coming to me of, people that have passed family. And but at the same time I have this thought of they're too busy. That
Oh, yeah.
they've got
It's
their
really
own
easy.
like family. They've got their own like an aunt, she's got her own kids and grandkids and people that she's kind of working with and so I kind of second guess like no, it wouldn't be her. It wouldn't be him. He didn't like me or it wouldn't, there so what are your suggestions about that kind of a is it just my own doubts?
Yeah, it's just your doubt, and that's okay. Like, give yourself like gentle, like it's okay to be doubtful. You're not doing it wrong. You're just learning. Because they once like again, they have their brain capacity is so incredible, and some people really just like checking in on people. Like they have that personality where they just want to have like their bucket full of I'm going to check in on these 70 people that were closest to me while I was alive. And you're like, does he really care that much to check in? But how it works is it's like if they choose to want to be connected to you, it's like almost like they have an antenna on their head for you specifically. And if you're going through something and they are a good match for helping you, then they'll come in that moment. Like that family friend who passed by suicide, he was also a therapist. And there was one time when I felt him come to me and he's like, free therapy. I'm here to just talk, like, I'm here to just be here for you as a therapist. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was so unexpected. But I was going through something and I really kind of needed to talk it out with somebody. So I just sort of was sending thoughts his way of what I was going through, and he was listening, and it felt really nice. And I wasn't expecting him to come through for me because he and I weren't close. He was close with my dad and my sister-in-law, but like the fact that he came through for me, it's almost like my radar went up. His radar went up. Camille needs a therapist, and he's like, well, I'd be good at that, you know? So be open. Don't limit what they can do, because how they work on the other side is very organized, and they can send the right person for the right job at the right time. And some people just like being in touch with a lot of people. Like my son, I had a dream where he showed me this bin. He had a little clear plastic bin full of these little toys. And I sensed the symbolism was that each little toy represented a person that he wanted to keep in touch with on Earth. And he had like 70 of them in this bin. And in the dream, I was with him, and I was at a hotel, and it was time for him to go to sleep, and he wanted to be tucked in right next to his bin of toys. He like was insistent that they all had to be next to him while he slept. And at the bottom of the bin, there was this little like 3 inches of water. And the dream I had right before that was like I was living in this world that was like on fire, and there was little fires happening everywhere, and it was just a stressful world that I had to live in and deal with. And so I interpreted it as he wants to keep tabs on a ton of people, and he has the capacity to do so. And he's like insistent, I'm going to keep these people close to me, and I'm going to help them put out the fires in their life. And so it was really a special dream where I was like, if he's keeping up with like 70 people and he was only 4 when he died, what about like the guy who was, you know, the pastor of my congregation who cared about 300 of us? Like, what's his capacity, you know? And he came through in the silliest way for me. He passed away a couple years ago, and his name's Doug. And I felt him come to me because apparently he was a really good chef who could put some stuff together. When you had very little to put together, he could make something amazing out of practically nothing. And I hate making dinner every night. It's just it gets so old. And I felt him coming, being like, what about this? Have you thought about that? And all of a sudden, I had this excitement about making dinner, whereas usually I hate it. And I was like, if Doug cares enough to come to me to help me create recipes or like come up with dinner ideas, he must have enough time on his hands to do a lot more important stuff and still check in on me. Because how important is that Camille has a few recipe ideas and is not so bored of making dinners? It only lasted for a couple weeks, but it was really fun. He'd pop into my head and I was like, oh, it's Doug again. I love him. So it's just, you don't want to limit what they can do, because their capacity is great. Yeah. And do they want to connect with you to help you? Yeah, they do. They're very generous and very loving. And also they feel so proud of their abilities. Like, let me show you what I can do. Well, let me show up for you because I can, right? All right, guys. Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to head out, help my husband put the kids to bed. But it was really fun to be here. And if you have any other questions, send me an email. If you want to sign up for a session, you'll get a follow-up email with that link. So good night.
Thank you.
Bye.